Thank you, Jared. Yes, hello and welcome to On the Couch following round 11 that finished with a magnificent victory by the Magpies over in the West. There has been some fallout. We'll have all the information on that shortly. Looking forward to talking to our special guest tonight, Michael Voss. And there is just one question remaining. Does he still want to conquer off the field as he did so many times on the field? One of your old mates is going to join us. Brownie, welcome to you.
Yes, it'll be great. It's great to see him doing well at Port Adelaide. The big questions at the moment, who is the best South Australian team, Jared?
Well, if they played each other right now, I'd find it very difficult not to tip Port Adelaide. Brownie, what about yourself?
I'm going for Port Adelaide, that's for sure, because opposition sides have found the blueprint on how to beat Adelaide Crows. We'll talk about that further.
Are you going to back in your old captain to get the job done again off the ground?
Definitely. I think he'll be a terrific senior coach if he gets another opportunity. I think he would have learned a hell of a lot after his first stint at the Lions.
Jason, welcome to you. I unfortunately missed last night, but congratulations anyway. I know you would have had a fair crack at Waiten Hill, but well done. And I believe you've got the texter out and you're going to put the line through somebody else.
Well, it's interesting, Jared. There's one team that I think most of us thought was in the mix and pretty much had in our top four there. They're not in it. They're done.
Oh, OK. I suspect we're going west again on that one. David, are you putting the black line through anybody, or are you going positive?
And just firing your bullets tonight, Jared.
Oh, good, I like that.
Having a look at the Richmond Football Club, and I think that Damien Harbick, the job that he's done, this time last year we were all talking about, well, not this time, but about round 15 last year, the new batch of assistant coaches that were coming in. Whose fault was it? Was it Damien's? Why is he blaming the assistants? They've been remarkable with their change. We want to highlight that later on.
Well, we'll look at them after this break, and we'll also talk about the Magpies. There were parts of footy that were absolutely magnificent on the weekend, and David, you and I were lucky enough to witness one of the great tussles. It was a great struggle. At times wasn't pretty, but we saw, gentlemen, a side that just found a way to win. They were down two men on the rotations, and they were also down two blokes on the ground who were both injured. But there was a moment in the game that stood out to me as the captain and possibly the next captain in line standing up and saying, if we're going to win this game, it is going to be up to us. They started on the half-back flank, both Pendlebury and Treloar. There was a throw-in and they just got on their bike, and 150 metres later, the two gentlemen both intersected with each other to kick back the Pies game in that last quarter.
Yeah, and I think it's hard to replicate just the tension that was in the game at this time, Jared. The game was in the balance. Freo had made their charge. It almost squared up the scoreboard. And Brownie, it was theirs to lose from there, really. And they found a way, these two stars, and it really was grabbing the game by the throat when they were down those couple of rotations, which was a huge part, because Daniel Wells has had a fantastic month.
Yeah, no, he has. They had a lot of injuries too. Like Tyson Goldsack was incredibly courageous.
Yep.
You know, late, he's playing with one arm. I'm not sure what's happened to his shoulder, but he's fantastic. What I loved out there, how strong Scott Pendlebury was with his leadership. He was very stern with a few of the blokes when they didn't, maybe pick up Fremantle players or didn't fill in holes in the zones. Incredibly strong direction out there. And they're playing like a side that has got Nathan Buckley's back. And that's since that half-time of that Hawthorn game when they were 40-odd points down and they've responded. That's always a good indicator of the coach, where the sides are playing from, and their effort has been fantastic. Just have a look at that. Contested possessions are 9 out of the last 10 quarters since that half-time of the Hawthorn game. It's been an amazing turnaround, Jared, and good signs for Buckley. Bodes well for Buckley's future.
Well, Collingwood's introduced another investigation into the club itself, but ultimately there'll be a decision made on Nathan Buckley. He put the bar at finals, and for me, that's a pretty fair bar. And I think unless there's exceptional circumstances with injuries, I think the footy world and Collingwood fans and members are entitled to hold him to that bar. He's going to be awfully close.
He's going to be very close. I don't think it's black and white as don't make finals. Now, as we know, Collingwood's had a shocking run of injuries the last few years, and they're having another bad run again this year. Obviously, Jamie Elliott's been key to them since he came back in, along with Wells. But I think I could still see the Pies just missing out. I've gone through their run to the finals. Fixture's not too bad. It's not as good as Melbourne's fixture, though. So if they lose this Monday against Melbourne, I'd find it hard to make finals. But I'm not sure that means Nathan Buckley would necessarily lose his job at the end of the year. I'm not sure.
Well, if the injuries continue to pile up, as they have done on the weekend, then there's going to be an out clause, no question about it. I think if they play, Jason, with the same determination that they've probably produced in the last couple of weeks, and in particular on the weekend, I don't think there'll be anybody really asking that question.
No, I'm a bit with Brownie. I think if they finish with 10, 11 or 12 wins and just miss out on the finals. The fact that they've been competitive in every game, I mean, the last few weeks they've breathed serious life back into their season. I'm not sure that they have to make the finals to see Nathan Buckley continue.
The Tigers, David, what a story that's been. You've talked about Damien Hardwick. Right now they're in the 4.
Oh, they've been fantastic, Jared. And it's a whole new way of playing. It's a whole new mode. Yep. This forward pressure, forward half pressure that I think Justin Leppich has had a huge hand in.
Yes.
No doubt the coach would have been ticking or crossing the offers that were put up. And I think that Justin has done a fantastic job. Blake Carousel is another one that has done the ball movement side of things. But when you have a look at the change, it is drastic. And I think it starts with pressure. 18th in the competition last year, 6th in the competition now. But if you be more specific and go to forward half pressure, 18th last year, 2nd in the competition this year. And what it's done, it's changed their whole scoring profile. The whole game's played in their forward half. They don't have to rely on Alex Rance to save them all the time, albeit he's a star. And it's given lesser talented players more opportunity, Jason.
I've had to put my hand up because I did not give Richmond the credit they deserved or the respect that they deserved. They're a genuine team. They're difficult to play against. In fact, all those statistics you just talk about there reflect a very good side. The only area they need to clean up is their conversion.
Yeah.
I mean, they're creating opportunities. If they get their conversion right, well, they'll go to another level again.
Do you have you had questions about them changing the whole coaching staff, apart from Damien Hardwick, pretty much in the off-season, Jace?
No, I think we're all curious as to working out how much of the can the assistants can carry. But I think they've had some good additions, as you said.
I don't think we said that last year.
But I think Damien Hardwick has also changed his philosophy as well. And he's got them all believing.
Last week we showed a stat that they've got very few goals out of their second tall. Now, if Griffiths is available, does he come back in, or do they say, no, we need to keep the pressure on, and the caddy substitute as the second tall is good enough for us as long as that forward pressure remains?
Look, I think it stays the same.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
Dustin Martin goes forward. I think what's working, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I don't think Ben Griffiths or Todd Alton, for that matter, bring enough to the table to justify their spot in the team.
Brownie, I know it's your area, the key position portfolio, but second tall forward as a role, how many of them in the AFL at the moment are actually fulfilling that role to the level you think that it's required, 30 to 40 goals? Because it seems they've gone back to the hybrid types. Most teams having one prominent target, and then it's a mix of midfielders and the hybrid type.
I think a recent history helps, King, and we saw the Western Bulldogs in September last year. They won with a smaller forward line. They had Jake Stringer as a key or a pseudo-key, we want to call that, probably more of a hybrid forward. And we had Tom Boyd and Roughhead, who played part ruck, part forward. Very mobile forward line. So Damien Hardwick would take, he would get confidence from the fact that you can win a premiership playing that style. It's an enormous amount of pressure, we know, on Jack Riewoldt, but they've set up for that. They've set up a high amount of pressure to lock the ball in the forward half. It's been a great transformation, Jared, and they're playing a finals brand of football for mine.
Before we move on, when Lob is back available for selection, I think they're a really fascinating watch at the present time. Does Lob go back in, or do they say, no, maybe it's a fight between Lob and Patton and Jono, just so they keep the pressure up?
Lob plays up on the wing at times too.
Yeah, and he plays in the ruck as well. He's
So he
very
goes back
agile.
in?
He does go back in because I think he justifies his spot, what he can bring to
I
the
don't think
table.
so. I think they'll stay just the one solitary target and keep spinning those smalls
You
that,
like John
that are hitting the
O'Patton.
scoreboard.
You like probably John O'Patton to, if he was in a bit better form, that'd give you more confidence maybe to bring Lob in. That's the question mark at the moment.
What an amazing turnaround for the Cats. They've gone from possibles to very likelies now, and there's no question that Joel Selwood, whilst he's the superstar of the competition at the moment, no question for me that his brother Scott Selwood has just been an amazing domino, which has allowed the second and third and fourth options in the middle just to play a little bit more outside, and the combination of the tag and the attack has been magnificent.
Yeah, when you look at those numbers, it's not dissimilar to what we were just wrapping the Tigers up for, is it? They're playing the game in the forward half. The pressure rating's fantastic. And as you mentioned, Scott Selwood's given them another dimension, and I think it's eased a bit of the pressure on the others that we were all demanding needed to step up and match Dangerfield and Joel Selwood. I think it's just, I think it's given them a little bit more depth, a little bit more grunt inside, and brought a few of the other players.
I think
into
it
the game.
balances up their midfield too, Jace, doesn't it? You know, Danger and Selwood are very attacking, and Selwood brings that defensive aspect to the midfield, but he still finds possessions.
Yeah.
He had 25 possessions on the weekend, so he's not a pure shutdown stopper, Jared.
Brownie, if Joel Selwood was 5 metres from the ball and Michael Voss was 5 metres from the ball on the other side, who would you back in to win that football?
Well, it's a tough one. I'm very biased, though. When I say Michael Voss, says here, is Joel Selwood the toughest you've seen? Well, no, he's not the toughest I've seen because no one will ever be as tough as Michael Voss was in all aspects of the game. But I tell you what, he's bloody close.
A draw would have been good.
A draw would have been
If
real
Joel
good.
Selwood's there and Michael Voss is there and the ball's in the middle, I don't want to be the footy.
No, the footy might
one thing I
might get
guarantee
eaten.
One thing's a certainty, there'll be blood, Jared.
There'll be blood and there'll probably be a few stars, but you know what? They're walking off.
When was the
They're
last
walking
time
off
he
and they're walking
didn't
to the
have
next
claret
contest.
in a game?
To come back onto the field after that and then back into the pack again, it was almost his first contest back out there. He's an amazing player, isn't he? What a leader. What an unbelievable captain.
Can I just say, and you know, Kingy, you were fortunate enough to play with a great leader. Great leaders, and Joel Selwood has this, and it's close to I've seen to Michael Voss, is they sense moments in games. They sense moments and they grab that moment and they do something special. And as teammates, you look at that and you're instantly inspired by it. And you think, geez, I want to follow them. I want to follow them and bring the same amount of effort that they just brought in that critical moment. Michael Voss did it, Luke Hodges done it, Wayne Carey done it, and Joel Selwood does it. And very few players in the history of the game been able to consistently do it in big games. That's why he's a great.
It's a great watch right now. Footy's in a pretty healthy space. Tom Hawkins, Jason, were you surprised that the match review panel gave him 1 week, 2 down to 1?
Not at all. And anyone that is surprised really needs a reality check. When you consider the discussions we've had the last couple of weeks, and we were talking about a little body punch that Zach Jones did last week and whether that was going to warrant a suspension. But there's two different philosophical discussions, whether you're talking about how much force there needs to be to warrant a suspension or whether you're trying to get rid of the punch. Now, if you're trying to get rid of the punch, it's got to get a week. So I've got no problem with that decision.
Probably 2 years ago, we would have been critical of the MRP, so there has been a 180-degree shift. And Chris Scott on AFL 360 says there may well be another 180-degree shift.
Well, I will say on the record, I suspect it'll go 180. I think that even the AFL, by their own admission, are saying, well, we're not comfortable with some of the things that have happened the previous few weeks, so we want the MRP to change, which they have. If we get to prelim final and that gets a week, there will be uproar. And I will be in that camp.
Bottom line is, players have been warned, coaches have been warned. You throw a punch, jump a punch in finals, you're a fool. And
Terry, before we leave that...
I don't think you get as much sympathy as Chris says.
Agree.
And I think the staging has to come back into vogue too.
Yeah,
As players,
absolutely.
I thought that was poor.
Yep.
I thought Krautz basically, he acted. He should get a fine for that, if not at minimum a letter. We used to send a letter, I think.
Well, the AFL, I reckon, sent 2 letters out a few years ago, King, and then it died. A very, very silent death, didn't it?
It's got him a week, basically.
Got him a week? Well, maybe not. But I think you're right. If you act, then you should get the letter. What about Adelaide, Brownie? Been disappointing the last couple?
Yeah, they've been very disappointing, and I think side's starting to work them out. We saw it happen with North Melbourne down at Hobart. The following week, Melbourne beat them at Adelaide Oval. Then on the weekend, Geelong at Geelong. If you want the blueprint on them, well, I'm going to make a quick comparison. Port Adelaide midfield compared to Adelaide's midfield. To me, Port Adelaide's midfield looks like they've got an edge. They've got a combative, hard edge to them that will survive the pressure of September. To me, the Adelaide midfield looks like they don't have that. Now, Rory Sloane is a very combative character. Yes, we acknowledge that, but he's been shut down lately. If we want to look at the how to beat Adelaide, these are the 3 or 4 things that have happened over the last, and Kingies, we've seen a fair bit of them as well. Number 1, you go after Rory Sloane.
Yep.
He's had significant drops in performance when he's heavily tagged. You shut down the Crows coming out of the back half. You put a fair bit of work in the lead. Look at that. That's a huge drop-off. Defensive half to inside 50 in their wins or losses. Huge drop-off. So the Crows love moving the ball quickly out of their back half. Sides are taking their connector away, which is mainly Tom Lynch. They're making sure he can't get you on the outside. They're putting a bit of work into Rory Laird especially, and and Atkins and Smith as well. And the other one is oppositions play 6 defenders. They don't let Adelaide beat them out the back now. On the weekend, Adelaide tried to play 8 defenders. So they had a very open forward line. So Jenkins and Betts and those guys can beat you out the back. Chris Scott refused to budge. He held 6 defenders the whole time. They don't let you out the back at all, do they, King?
Well, I think we've seen it. And the Kangaroos showed it.
Yeah.
The Melbourne Football Club did it differently. We've got a bit of vision here to show you, Jared, just exactly what that means, not opening yourself up. We saw Geelong do it. They're the masters at holding that last defender back, that anchor defender, that anchor roll they like to call it. And you can see all the defenders retreating back first, staying goal side. Incredible discipline from those guys. And Guthrie getting back first. Here's the Melbourne game a few weeks ago at the Adelaide Oval. You can see Frost holding back, not giving up that inside 50 space. Jeff Garlett, small forward, playing a fantastic defensive role, guarding the corridor so nothing can come at speed. He alone forces them wide, forces them backwards, and it allows the Melbourne defenders to get reorganised, get some midfield support down there and gum up that forward 50. And what it does do, it takes away those stroll into goal square goals, 0 to 15, which we've seen Eddie Betts and Jenkins and Walker kick over the last couple of years. Against Melbourne, they kick 1. And that's the plan. If you can do that, you basically take away all their speed. They've scored 86, 66 and 74 points in their losses. And that's the key, Brownie, if you can take the speed off them.
Yeah, no doubt. They've got a bit of a sameness to their midfield, I think. They tend to, under a bit of pressure, they tend to just blast away with their kicks. They don't have a lot of zip in their midfield. That's why they try and get Charlie Cameron through there. So they need to live. And even from, I was disappointed. I said Rory Sloane. Normally Rory Sloane's pretty combative and he goes after the opposition's best midfielder. Even when he's getting tagged, didn't see any of that on Friday night against Geelong. So I think Rory would be disappointed with his own performance there. He's got a huge ratings drop-off. He drops about 50 rankings points in those losses. So that's a significant concern for Don Pike and his coaching staff.
Don't get off them though, Jared.
No, 3 losses out of 4.
Yeah.
Oh, no, we're not writing them off. I'm just saying.
It's good to have a mid-season slump rather than one late
That's right.
September.
Side's got a bit of a blueprint. It's a consistent blueprint. Can Adelaide work that out? So they've got enough quality players there to see if they can get through it.
Challenging weekend for Hawthorn, Jason. I suspect that the coffin was brought out again last night, but it was a shocking first half. They fought back well, but it's a huge reality check for everybody at Hawthorn.
Well, I don't think it's... I shouldn't say it's a shock because I think we've seen enough of
That
those,
sort of drop-off
those
is a
type
shock.
of performances this year to know that they're a long way off the pace. It's the margin and the nature of the losses that I think would be causing great concern down at Hawthorn. And all I think it does is highlight exactly where they're at, and they have to rebuild.
And how they rebuild is going to be interesting. They have been the masters at plucking senior players from other clubs. They had a hole in their list around the 24 mark, and they went for O'Meara and Mitchell. And Mitchell, without question, has been good. Sadly for O'Meara, his body hasn't held up just now. But are they at a point where they say, right, it's back to the draft?
Have to. They can't pluck 8 blokes from other clubs, Jared. You can't get 8 quality players.
Does it force a retirement of a few at the top end?
I think there's no doubt. We saw that transition at the end of last season. The same thing's going to happen this year. We're not throwing them out just for the sake of throwing players out, but there has to be a transition. This team has been so good for so long. Players are coming to the end. You've got to regenerate underneath.
And the confidence is shot. I mean, a couple of these kicks from Josh Gibson here, he just lost his way. All this happened in a 8-minute window. He lost his confidence in his own ability to hit a target or take the right option, and he looked a shadow of the Josh Gibson we know. And I know, Jason, that form is quick and you can turn things around in a heartbeat. But when you're going through this sort of slump as a team, personally, you can't afford to allow that to impact your game. And I just feel for Josh at the moment.
Well, you've got the black texter out. Where's the line going?
I don't think it's any secret, Jared, when we take a close look at the West Coast Eagles. I know they're 6-5 and they're inside the 8, but they are just going at the moment. And I got to see them firsthand on the weekend. They've got some real problems. Their midfield is not firing at all. There's none of that run and carry that we used to see. I know Nick Nat's a big loss for them, but that's not an excuse for the midfield to be playing the way they are. There is a very unhealthy reliance on Josh Kennedy up forward. All of a sudden, he's missing on the weekend, and they were impotent up forward. Jack Darling just isn't cutting the mustard. Lacra's best football is behind him, without being disrespectful. It's been a great career, but he's another one that's just starting to find things a little bit tough. Josh Hill, Jamie Cripps, they just couldn't get the job done. And what they're having to do is rely on intercept football down back, but then the movement and their transition of the ball isn't good enough to hit targets going forward. Now, if you look at team statistics, they are average everywhere. And that's exactly what they are, an average team. And Adam Simpson came out recently and said they're an average team. So expect them to be where they are. just inside the 8. But they're not going to do any damage come the end of September.
Their midfield, to me, is still the problem. We spoke to Adam Simpson about this, and you just look at some of the players that they've lost, let go or traded. Selwood, Ebert and Stevens would be pretty handy in that group right now, and they've got to, if they're going to maximise their opportunity, and right now they're in the window given their demographic, they've got lots of people in good places in defence, great intercepting defence. They've got a pretty good forward line, need to get a few, potentially some precious forwards up there. But they've got to find some runners through that middle of the ground.
Way too much trust in a few of those guys.
Yep.
Way too much from Adam Simpson. It's time to cut the cord on a few.
It's really interesting when we had a look. They still had a chance to win this game without playing well. And we've been analysing the last plays in games for a number of weeks now. 46 seconds on the clock. And a lot of people are criticising, the setup because Shannon Hurn is going to go short. Now, they have got numbers down the middle. Tom Lynch has very cleverly placed himself behind it. 46 seconds is a lot of time. You don't have to panic. So the kick to Mitchell's okay if Hurn gets it back or if Mitchell plays on and then kicks long down the middle. But this is beyond comprehension, the short kick into the pocket. And there's no urgency from any of the other players. I'm convinced they didn't know how little time was left. But then they get a second chance. They actually get a long kick to a contest. You've got Vardy and Petrie, your two talls. You've got 4 great crummers in front. And if that ball comes to ground, they get an inside 50 and a chance to steal the game. They got no contest. Tom Lynch took an uncontested mark up on the wing. Now, that to me says the whole structure's fallen apart. No one took the bit between the teeth and said, I have to make something happen.
Got some issues, and even if they didn't know exactly how many seconds were left, they must have known that it was tight.
Oh. Would you bring back, just hypothetical, Nick Naitanui? Look, clearly it's the difference between playing finals and not. If they're an also-ran side, maybe bordering on the edge of the 8, do you bring Nick Naitanui back this season or do you hold him for next year?
I don't think you can make a decision based on the latter. You just have to make a decision. When Naitanui's right to go, you play him. Even if you didn't have a chance, I think it's always beneficial for a player to have 2 games, then a pre-season, and then fire your shot again.
As long as there's no risk involved.
You would never risk any player even for a second semi-final. You wouldn't risk him, and particularly that particular person with his jump and his requirement of that stable leg.
You wouldn't want to make that error, Jerry, but there was another error made on the weekend. The Essendon Football Club failing to tag Josh Kelly at any point in this game, even not at the start. I can concede that maybe you don't start the game with a tag, but this was about 4 minutes in, Jared. And this is Josh Kelly, who's had the second most disposals in the competition for the last 6 weeks, with 70 metres of space on a half-forward flank 4 minutes into the game. Now, I don't know if he was Brendan Goddard's direct opponent, but by the look of his teammates, they weren't too happy with his efforts at the start of that game. It set an easy goal up for Taranto, and I was just staggered. He went and had 38 disposals. He's been the most informed midfielder, aside from Dangerfield and Martin, that we've seen this season. He's been all the talk. How can you not put some time into him? I was baffled by that, and I'm not surprised he didn't get the result. They ran them to about a goal and a half there late in the game and still didn't put any time into Kelly. I wonder what would have happened if they had assigned someone to him just for a 30-minute window, just to try and stifle his influence.
Well, it was baffling because he's been such a dominant player, and Taranto's not going to make it, David. If he goes back and kicks a drop punt rather than going round the corner or doing a dribble kick from there, Jason, he's in big trouble. We're going to take a break because up next is one of the greats of the game on the field. Michael Voss, what a player he was. The question is, has he got the desire to again go into the coach's box and conquer off the field?
Pollock to Archie to Broadbent. They're looking confident here, Port. This time it's Gray.
Howe tapped it even, brilliantly done. Gets it through. Archie. Yes!
Hodge works his way through to Gibson. Boak. Here's another one coming up. You can't believe it. They've got 6 in the opening term.
Yes, they have been one of the great stories of 2017, and particularly awesome in the first half last Thursday night to kickstart round 11. One of the stars of the competition on the field over the last couple of decades is now their assistant coach in Michael Voss, and he joins us from Elwerton. Welcome to you, Vossi.
Jared?
And great to see the club's obviously got a sponsorship with Franco Cozzo, but good to see you nice and relaxed. Life must be good over there.
Yeah, it's a nice couch I'm sitting on here. But, yeah, I mean, the guys have been really impressive with their consistency over the first part of the year and hopefully looking to build on that in the second half of the year.
Michael, can I take you back to the off-season? Much has been made of you, as a coaching group, deconstructing the whole game plan, analysing where you went wrong, analysing where you went right. In many ways, your boss's job, Ken Hinkley's, was in many ways on the line of you getting it right.
Yeah, and Ken has to lead that charge, to his credit. We sat down as a coaching group and, as you said, we deconstructed what we were doing. And we looked at all things. Nothing was off the table. We talked about what game style was going to win us, going forward. What type of leadership program did we need to have? Even just as coaches, how we were communicating to the players and how the messages were getting through. So nothing was off the table, and we pulled it all apart and put it back together. And so far, we're having there's some good early signs.
Vossi, how much input did the players have into the way they wanted to play and the way things needed to change? Because there was a feeling that the disconnect was there between the players and Ken.
Oh, it was pretty significant. I mean, Ken has a really strong relationship with all the players, in particular our leadership group, and is in constant dialogue with them all the time. And we sort of thought that through the year that getting in as a coaching group with our leaders and discussing what the way forward was really important. And they brought all their thoughts. They were extremely honest in their views and how we needed to go forward. And then it was us up to coaches to be able to put a program around them. And they've fully embraced all those changes. They've led it in many instances, and their leadership as a result has gone to another level.
You've obviously benefited from a couple of players coming back, in particular Paddy Ryder, but you've made some changes. Gray's playing predominantly as a forward. Ebert's gone from playing out in the wing to more inside. But from a tactical perspective, has there been one specific thing that you've done that's had a major impact?
Oh, well, I think that, when we talked about tactics, one of the big things, and we just touched on our leaders, our leaders have been out on the field and they're playing some pretty impressive footy. They're all in really good form. And so you're in a headspace to be able to lead what changes need to be made. Some of those changes that we made, were implemented, in personnel changes. You highlighted whether it was Robbie, whether it's Chad Wingard playing on the ball. So we had a big chat around that. But it was also sort of building on some of the things that we started to implement at the back end of last 2016. And as you know, like Ken is massive on defence. So we honed in on the turnover score because we're just giving up, too many easy goals against us.
Vossi, Charlie Dixon has been in fantastic form this year. He had a restricted pre-season though, so what's the major reason for his form this year?
Well, he's had some continuity. I mean, I don't know his previous background with his body and whether we could get out on the park, often week after week. But he's, since pre-season, he had a bit of injury interruption throughout the pre-season. But since that point in time, he hasn't missed any sessions. He's, I guess, learned a little bit about the players around him. But he's just bringing an enormous workload with him at the moment. And it's not just in the air, Brownie. It's been also on the ground, which I think has been equally impressive.
Vossi, what about your philosophies on the game, particularly the coaching side of the game? What you come in with or what your thoughts were back in your Brisbane days to where you are right now? What would be the major shifts?
Oh, not so much major shift, Kingy. I think the early specification, the spec that I got from Ken was to, work on contest. And, given the fact that I look after a lot of the midfield area, that's where the majority of that happens. So that's where I've spent a hell of a lot of my time and trying to get the detail right in that. So that's the small part that I play. But that, I guess, what's Ken really strong in is making sure that we become reliable in that space.
Vossi, talking about the contest and also the midfield, you must be doing a lot of one-on-one individual work with Sam Powell-Pepper because he's running through blokes. If he can't run through them, he runs over them. He is a star.
Yeah, I'm careful how much work I do with him. Try and stay out of his way is probably the best way to do it. And when you've got big midfielders like Ollie Wines and also Brad Ebert, They're big boys. So I make sure that they just pair up with one another rather than join in on any training sessions. But look, it's pretty impressive what he has done. I mean, for him to be able to come in as an 18, 19-year-old and understand not just what he needs to do and how he needs to set up around the ball, its structure, and have to understand that. But then when the ball leaves the area and the transition type of running that he needs to have as a midfielder has been really impressive, and he's learnt really quickly.
Michael, I remember having a coffee with you over in Ireland some years ago, and I asked you about what you wanted to do after such a celebrated playing career, and quite brutally and quite bluntly, you said you wanted to be a great AFL coach. Have you still got that burning ambition? Because clearly you need to take the step up into the top office to achieve that.
Yeah, they're lofty ambitions there, Jared, that's for sure. Never one to shy away from a big task. I still think, that obviously burns deep for me, and whether another opportunity exists there or not, well, that'll play out. But the best thing that I could possibly do right now is just to continue to work on my own craft, but purely with the interests of making our group better. And I feel that if I can improve as a coach and that can make our players a little bit better, then that's going to hold us in good stead for this year, and then hopefully experience some success as a club.
So, Vossi, let's say senior coaching positions became available and all of a sudden you were in the mix. What lessons have you learnt? What would make you a better coach second time around?
It's a good question, Jace. Like, just being able to hone it down to one thing is a really difficult thing to do, and I get asked this question quite a fair bit. But I think the big thing that you have to do is just really give yourself a strong self-evaluation, and in many ways you're really overhauling your coaching style, and you have to have a genuine commitment to learning, and that's what I've tried to do. And you're looking at all things to be able to try and make sure that you become a better coach second time round, and I guess become a better version of yourself. But you can't roll out the same thing. You have to be look at it. It didn't work. Why didn't it work? And then go to work to try and fix that. And more importantly, to the reason to make this group better.
What about your game style, Vossi? Your beliefs with game style going forward? Because I thought, when you came onto the lines, you were pretty proactive with the ball movement side, which has become a big thing in the AFL now. Has your game style or your philosophies around game style changed much?
Oh, not much. If anything, it's been reinforced, and that's why spending some time with Ken. He's been really strongly defensively minded, and we know when I first walked into the door, that's all he spoke about. He still speaks about it now, and even when we talk about ball movement, it still has a defensive mindset, attached to it. So, in some ways, that's been a really good balance to me, and had a shift in focus in terms of what really works.
Vossi, we've been judging here who wins the football. 5 metres between you and Joel Selwood, ball in the middle, head-to-head, away you go. Who wins?
Oh, I'm not sure, but it might be a car accident at the end. But no, look, I mean, all you can do is sit back and admire, really. Just watching the way that he plays, and there's a skill clearly in what he does, but there's this amazing unquantified will that he has to be able to pick the moment and also just throw himself at the football, and when you watch him play, you just can't help but just admire that and follow that, I'd imagine, if you're a Geelong player. So it's something that we'd like in every single player, but not every single player possesses.
Now, Vossi, I need you to help me out here. I understand the skill involved in dribble kicks from tight angles. Fantastic. But when players run into an open goal from 20 or 30 out directly in front and they miss with the dribble kick, is that just me being an old fart, or have we got a problem in the game, mate?
No, I think you've got some... there are certainly things that they practice, but I would have thought 20 metres out straight in front with nothing between you and the goals warrants some elevation in the kick, Jace.
So would the player be still empowered to kick the ball around the corner? I remember Malcolm Blight being dragged from the ground doing a left-foot boomerang that went through the goals by Ron Barassi, and he said, well, do it 7 times out of 10 and I'll tick it off. Well, he couldn't do that. But would you have that same discussion with players?
Oh, I think what we would like to see is that there's at least some thought and routine in it, and that's been practice, and we're not just pulling something out of thin air and trying it for the very first time. So, as coaches, that's our rigid hat on, saying at least we've got some method in what we're trying to achieve, and there's some predictability in what you're trying to do. But we also know that players do random things, and they like to put a little bit of flair on it. We have some tolerance to that, but not at the expense of the team.
Paddy Wright has been a huge player for you so far this year. In fact, I was surprised when some people announced their All-Australian side that he didn't get a spot in the ruck.
I was surprised too, is that if there's been teams out there and he's been left out of it, I'm generally surprised. I mean, he's been a significant difference to us. And even just if you look purely on his form only, he's been fantastic. And, one of the real strengths that we've had this year is that our tall players have really stood up. And, we've talked about Charlie there earlier, and Paddy certainly sits in that category for us. You could go to Tom Jonas, Jack Homsch, Cleary down back. I mean, they've all been really important players for us this year. And when you have tall players who stand up, it makes a real difference.
Just before we let you go, Vossi, you played the game hard, you copped plenty. You also gave a bit out. We just saw Tom Hawkins get rubbed out for a week with a jumper punch. Do you think it's overkill? Do you think we need to crack down on this, or would you like a bit of licence for the players?
Oh, well, the old style football in me says that, a jumper punch here and there doesn't hurt anybody. But I do fit very much in line with, that time has changed. And the tolerance to be able to see those sorts of things, I think, should be removed from the game. Players have a fantastic way of being able to manipulate the environment, whether that's got to be with deliberate out of bounds, whether that's rush behind, whether that's jumper punching. And I think if we can make just a really clear line for the players, and they'll operate within those boundaries. But I think it's a good idea if we get rid of it in our game.
Vossi, just quickly, I was reviewing your answer before. You didn't say Selwood or yourself. Can you give me an answer, please? Who wins that ball?
Oh, I think Selwood would win it. There you go. So I reckon he's a bit of a bull.
Well, that's because Vossi's been retired for a few years.
He's 40 years old.
40 years old. Of course he win it, but I'll answer it for you, Vossi. I'm going to still say the old number 3.
Great to catch up with you, Michael.
Thanks,
and it's
mate.
really pleasing, really pleasing that the passion to coach still burns, because without question, you've got some mountains still to climb. Good luck for the rest of the season in your role, and thanks for your time.
Thanks, guys.
Michael Voss from Port Adelaide. We're going to take a break, and coming up after the break, David King, a 2-time All-Australian defender himself, is going to cast his eye across the competition and give us his thoughts on who should be in the All-Australian side, defensive-wise, at the halfway mark. Well, both Brownie and Jason Dunstall have been raving about this young bloke. Jack Leslie, he started to build a big reputation as a standout defender for the Suns, and was again impressive against the Eagles on the weekend. And one day, David, he may feature in your All-Australian defence for the halfway mark.
This is, I'm on hiding nothing here, Jerry, but I'll just put up 6 names and you can pick them apart, boys, and tell me which one you disagree with.
I don't think he's in, David King.
No, I'm not in, no. Okay. The Smalls, I think, virtually picked themselves, and there's a field of about 8 you had to squeeze down to 4. Jeremy Howe, the number 1 intercept marker in the competition. Elliot Yeo, who's been a sensation down back and must go back there. Rory Laird's been an accumulation machine. And Dylan Robertson, who may not be in everyone's, but I think he's been a large part of St Kilda's success. The key posts, I didn't have McGovern there. I thought Hurley, off a year of absence, back in playing unbelievable football. And Alex Rance, well, he is the Richmond defence.
A couple of ex-forwards there, Jason.
He's left a few out, isn't he?
It's now time to pick your All-Australian side, brought to you by Australian Almonds, and not necessarily nuts picking them. Jump on to foxfooty.com.au/allows, all Oz that is. Now to pick from the squad of 40 hard.
What did he call it?
That would be all Oz.
Come on, Jared.
/all Oz, and you can pick up yourself some almonds.
Speaking of nuts.
Let's move on to the prior opportunity. 4 umpires, boys. Did you think that impressed or help the umpiring of the game?
I don't mind it because it gives them another set of eyes on the stoppage from close in, centre bounces and the boundary throw-ins especially.
The one thing that really is frustrating for the whole season, didn't improve on the weekend, is prior opportunity. I think they've got to rethink this whole issue of prior opportunity. Have a look at here. Rioli hasn't got prior opportunity. Ball bobbles out or he lets it go.
He tried to spin out of the tackle.
He tried to. Here's another one. Why does he pick that ball up? He gets slam tackled. He gets a free kick against. There's no prior opportunity here. And this one's slammed to the deck. He gets a free against. And this one, exactly the same thing. Umpire comes in and pays a ball up.
Jared, on a quick history lesson. Back in the 70s and 80s, was there prior opportunity around?
Not officially prior opportunity, no.
I think this, Brownie, just to ask you, the 4 umpires versus 3, I think all we do is bring another interpretation in. We may miss a couple with positioning. I think we should wear that. Stick with the 3. In fact, I may nearly go back to the 2 because you get consistency across the day, not 3 different thoughts on the same event.
I didn't notice 4 being out there. Didn't even notice it. So it's not impacting on the game, I don't think. And if there's more angles to look at, I've got no problem with it.
We need to address this prior opportunity. There's just too much variation between umpires, between weeks, even within this season.
Can we go black and white, Jared? Can we get rid of prior opportunity?
I don't think you can get rid of prior opportunity for the ball winner. You may argue, and I'd like to see a trial for the ball receiver. We've spoken to Adam Simpson about that. But you can't deny the bloke protection if he goes in and wins the ball. To me, that is just against the charter. Gillon McLachlan, who I think is in favour of getting rid of prior opportunity, he actually endorsed the charter, and that's one of the key components.
Do we think the players are going to stand back, though? Players naturally will still go at the football.
No, they won't.
Are you getting any traction for your team, prior opportunity?
Well, I would just like to see, not call team prior opportunity, but if you win the ball, you get double. If you receive the ball, if you want to get rid of prior opportunity, take it away from the receiver. But you can't take it away from the winner. The arm chop also is one that seems to come and go. How this umpire did not pay this free kick is beyond me.
Robbed.
That boy is always going to take that mark. Grimes comes in, drags the ball down to the ground.
But
and
that's just human error, Jared. It's going to happen. That's like...
No, it's gone away.
No, but that's like a player making a mistake. An umpire's human. He's going to make a mistake.
If it was a one-off, Jason, I wouldn't be interested in it. That's
I
not
didn't
a
see
one-off.
many of them.
There are half a dozen or more that should be paid on a weekly basis. The arm chop, as a decision itself, has died, and it should come back strongly.
Defenders are getting better at it too, and just checking the arm before the forward gets their arm up as well, Jared. So the umpires need to watch for that.
I reckon, Kingy, the other thing that stood out to me over the weekend is just how much of a hindrance having a slow midfield can be in this modern day. Yes, they can win 30 possessions, but if you've got more than one slow midfielder, you're in a bit of strife.
I know Ben Cunnington's impacted at the moment, but this just highlights the difference between the quality ball use going inside the opposition's forward 50 if you can't get pressure on.
He looks crook running there.
He did. Here's Pritis, and this was at a critical juncture of last week's game. He can't go with Kolodjasny, who runs past him. So Nelson leaves his man, who was Brandon Materia, to go and assist to put some defensive heat on, causes the same flow and effect down the field. And then all of a sudden, Materia waltzes in without a defender on him, unaccompanied, and kicks the goal, Jason. I just think the slow midfielder kills you. And what's happening is the Giants have raised the bar. They're maximum damage with high speed, out of stoppage. They're scoring heavily. You've got to match that. You can't just be a ball winner only now. You need more than that from your midfield.
Must have been late in the game, was he? He had the lead boots on.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is too... I mean, we're doing it in isolation. Sometimes they might have been involved in 2, 3, 4 phases and they're just dead on their feet. But you're right, if they don't have leg speed to start with, they're going to be in trouble.
And don't forget that website again.
Allows.
foxfooty.com/all Oz. We're going to take a break. And as the rumours keep on growing, so too do the Bucks. And after the break, Mick Warner is going to tell us what's real and what's myth as the trade talk heats up for the free agents. Well, can't wait for Thursday night, the rematch of the rematch with both Sydney and the Bulldogs desperate for a win. And boys, it will again be live and free.
Of ads.
on Fox. Mickey Warner joins us. Welcome to you, Mick. And the Suns are making some unfortunate headlines following a great victory.
Yeah, look, they clawed back a lot of respect on the weekend with that great win over West Coast, but a lot of that work's been undone already. It started on Saturday night or the early hours of Sunday. Jack Martin, a star player, was assaulted in a nightclub up there in Broadbeach, and now the club is saying that he is an innocent party. The bloke who's belted him has been charged. Then the news got even worse. At about 9 a.m. this morning, when Rocket Eve was doing the radio rounds, Jared Harbrow, who's an original son, along with Gary Ablett, picked up by Police Blue, .108 guys, and I think, Brownie, that's probably the last thing that Rocket Eve needed at this moment.
Yeah, that's right. Obviously, good win on the weekend. They've shown some signs, but I'm not sure if it hurts Rocket. At the end of the day, it's going to come down to the win-losses. But yeah, you wouldn't want any other indiscretions on top of that, that's for sure. But Jared Harbrow picked up on the way to training, was he?
I'm not sure where he was going, but it was at 8:50 a.m.
What's the likely penalty?
He's not playing this weekend, and he will address the leadership group during the week, so it could be even heavier.
And he is a leader. He is in the leadership group as well. So very disappointing considering Jared Harbrow was in your nominations for all Australian defenders.
Collingwood, after a great win, all the news is about injuries.
Yeah, it's come at a bit of a toll, this great win over there for Collingwood. And Jamie Elliott, as we know, it's the same ankle that he hurt in the pre-season. He flew back today, so still waiting on the scans, but you'd think he'll be out for some time. Daniel Wells looked like a pretty nasty calf for him, and Tyson Goldsack as well. Interestingly, that Alex Fasolo, who, as we know, sat out last week with his issues, has put his hand up. He wants to play on Monday in the Big Queen's birthday game, and I think as long as the club are happy with that and the psychologist, he probably will play. James Aish, he's also fit from that horrific injury he had a few weeks ago, and Callum Brown a chance. And keep an eye out for a kid called Cale Kirby in the VFL. Kicked 6 on the weekend. I think he's kicked 12 in the last 3 weeks. Exciting prospect.
Mick, I know you've done a lot of work on this, but the news surrounding free agents has really heated up over the weekend. Nat Fyfe, St Kilda have said they're out of the race.
Yeah, I think there is no longer a race for Nat Fyfe. I think we can say that he will stay at Fremantle. The trail has gone cold somewhat, but maybe he was never going to leave. There was talk of a $1.5 million asking price for him, but Nat Fyfe, all signs are he will stay at Fremantle Footy Club.
It's a big call to leave as captain of a footy club. And I think the feeling is that he will stay. And maybe sides have dropped off a little bit because he hasn't been setting the world absolutely on fire. But it's always going to take a bit of time for him to get back to his best form. And I expect Nat Fyfe to be back up the top.
Absolutely. I think the announcement will come shortly. Yeah. Is Josh Kelly the linchpin that could determine a few other deals?
Absolutely. I think all planets revolve around young Josh Kelly. He's only 22 years of old, but he's at the centre of amazing tug-of-war. Figures of $12 million being bandied around. St Kilda and North Melbourne are the two clubs, and they might just go hammer and tong to go after this kid. Obviously the Giants as well. I think the signs are that that's almost too much money, Kingy, for him to knock back.
Too much for Kelly to knock back from the Kangaroos
or St Kilda?
From St Kilda. Well, I hope you're right.
What's it got to? 1 point what?
I think it's 12 million over 9. I'm not good at maths. Is that about 1.3?
He's leaving for that.
Stephen May.
Stephen May. So some good news out of the Gold Coast Suns over the weekend. The positive vibe is that he will sign and stay as the skipper.
Jason Johannesson?
He's asking for a lot of money. It's been bandied around 800,000, Jason.
Too much for a running halfback.
Devon Smith.
Too much.
Too much. You wouldn't pay that.
Smith medalist.
They can't afford to lose him.
20% salary cap.
Yeah, I'm not paying 800 for a running halfback.
Can't lose him. Can't afford to lose him.
Devon Smith.
Devon Smith, I think, is one who'll fall out the back of the GWS, as is Jacob Hopper. Those two players will.
Zach Jones, I
think he'll stay.
Dustin Martin, when will they announce he's staying at Richmond?
If Richmond pay him 5 years at 1.1, he'd probably sign tomorrow.
Tommy Rockcliffe?
He'll stay.
Zaharakis?
In danger, I think, of leaving.
Stephen Motlop down at Geelong.
He's a lock to stay. He's had a good year.
And Sam Reid.
Interesting one. I think there's a few teams, including Richmond, who would be looking at him.
What's it going to take for Geelong to get Gary Ablett?
Well, that's a very good question, because I think that there's every chance that he'll win his 9th All-Australian jumper this year, such as his turnaround. I don't know. What do you think, Brownie? What would satisfy the Suns?
Maybe a second or a third pick. And if Ablett got 2 years at $500,000 a year, that gives him his $1 million. But I'm not so sure Geelong would be as keen as everyone thinks.
And the Suns, the mood at the weekends, they're pretty keen to keep him, or at least they'll fight hard for him.
I think Bryce Gibbs is a really interesting story at the present time. I think Adelaide have realised over the last couple of weeks they need a little bit of pace, but he's playing great footy for Carlton. Mick, interesting stuff. Great to have you back on the program. We'll speak to you next week, and we'll speak to you next week, Monday night, after the Queen's birthday match between Melbourne and Collingwood.